communities, because communities also are very important partners in order to ensure that we make our rail system to be very safe.
Minister, it's governed from ENCA. The preliminary report shows that this was a case of human error. As far as the court order says, there should have been a senior manager overseeing the communication between the controls. What has your department done to hold the people who were responsible for the human error accountable?
We have asked the board to actually engage on this matter and tell us what they are going to do. Because as I said when I visited the scene, there must be accountability. That's absolutely non-negotiable. There must be accountability where problems are and so on. People who have done wrong things or have been negligent, action will have to be taken. I'm not saying that people who were there, giving instruction, driver misunderstood, they mustn't be approached, But we can't be blaming ordinary workers all the time for problems that do not start with them. That I do not like. That we have workers, ordinary workers, as victims, when actually we should be going deep down to say, why in this day and age do we have train crashes? In this day when we have got enormous technology, even if you would have had problems with copper or with the lines and so on, there must be some other mechanisms to be able to prevent this. We are also not saying that the criminals who are actually stealing the wires should not be dealt with, because they are murderers also. We are here today, a mother and a father have left their young children. They were also young, 1980 and 1979, that's when they were born. We can't just be coming back to this and be crying and then nothing happens. Those criminals must also be arrested. We must actually look for them and find them. But as I have said, I would like to repeat this. We also, as government, are going to work to partner with communities, because communities also know a lot of things about who may be involved in these things. And where we have had successful engagement with communities, we are able to deal with these problems.
Will you be pushing for internal departmental action to be taken against the people, or do you believe that criminal charges should be pursued here?
Whatever the reports are going to say. If the report says people must be dealt with in terms of internal disciplinary process, and also that there must be criminal prosecution, we must follow that up. Of course, I am waiting for the full reports so that we are able to study those, and then we are able to decide what to do. People were saying before, well, this has happened, we complain, we protest, we come and express condolences, and then it's business as usual. As far as I'm concerned, this must be it, and no further.
Okay. You have another question?
Yeah, for the CEO of PRASA, please, sir. If I could for Mr. Sithole, sir. So what do you have to say to the commuters who use the PRASA system on a daily basis, who now are concerned that they may be putting their lives at risk when they use your trains?
I think the message is very clear from the minister as well as from the board of PRASA, that it can be business as usual, that as a rail operator we have to take drastic steps in order to manage and reduce and eliminate, in fact, that there are these occurrences in our system. The board has taken very specific resolutions last week in a special meeting that as a group CEO, together with the CEO of rail and other management, must begin to implement, largely to address the fatalities. We have to go back basically to all the occurrences over the last 3 to 5 years, understand what transpired, what actions were recommended, and what has been accomplished and what hasn't been accomplished, and why, and begin to basically apply consequence management in respect of areas where, as management, we have failed to do what we are supposed to do.
But sir, your company, PRASA, has failed to implement the court order which said that there should be a senior manager overseeing the communication. So how can the public trust you to implement the new interventions?
Well, I wouldn't venture to say that we failed to implement the court order, because the specifics in respect of the special conditions that apply to our permit are actually being implemented as we speak. And then on a monthly basis, we are actually submitting the reports that are necessary to the rail regulator, but also to the court. But obviously, we have said that this incident opens our eyes to other sort of issues that we may not have been attending to as drastic as we are supposed to. And that's why we are determined to go even deeper in terms of understanding the root causes of what has transpired, and basically developing other solutions that are supposed to look into the issues on a holistic basis, on an integrated basis, such that even the restoration of the safety culture must then not just be something that we preach, but it's something that is being practiced all over the organization.
Thank you. Isabel, last question.
Isabel from Neighbour 24. The latest figures that I got from the railway safety regulator was that from January up until November, the highest number of manual authorizations were given in Gauteng, and that was more than 500,000 for that period. What is your comment on this?
Well, I can't comment on the technical details on my part. All what I want to say is that the issue of putting in proper signaling, I know for a fact it's a priority by PRASA. And I'm further urging PRASA to even go faster. But that alone, without also effectively attending to security, is not going to help much, because we put signaling and they are vandalized. So we also have to address the issue of security. I have said this, I don't deal with supply chain management. We can't be having the same security companies at PRASA chowing hundreds of millions of rands, and then things are continuing just like this. We aren't seeing any benefits, I'm sorry. So those matters, manual signaling is very dangerous. But also I was raising this matter inside here, that we also need to be looking at technology. You know, I mean, technology with the rail system in the rest of the world, we have a lot to learn. Lots of technology is already there. And as I have already said, we are sitting with a PRASA that is sitting with close to 20 billion rands unspent on infrastructure, and we can't be able to put in such basic things as trains being able to detect, you know, other trains in the vicinity or in front of other trains. It's completely unacceptable. Those are the things that have got to be looked into comprehensively. By the way, incidentally, that is why one of the things I want to do this year, hopefully by March, is to convene a conference on transport and technology. Because I think that we are still behind in some respects as a country, and yet we do have the capacity to address these things in order to save people's lives. So that amongst other things, we've got a much safer railway transport system. Throughout the world, other than flying, rail is normally the safer, if not the safest in many instances. We just have got to get it right and eliminate the manual signaling. Because if it's manual signaling, you are bound to actually have mistakes and errors. That is why I am saying we can't just only be blaming ordinary workers for these mistakes.
Can we get quickly feedback from PRASA while they are here? Can they maybe elaborate on what has been done?
They can, but can I release the minister?
Yes.
Because he has to go to the media briefing now. You know that we're supposed to start at 1. And
yes.
Okay.
So that you don't say I'm late when you're late.
We'll see you there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
As a manager, I think we must just cut it and then we must go to UCINS.
The family, they're gonna say something.
Mama, can I ask you something? Do you accept the explanation that was given to you by the government about what went wrong?
Because I've seen everything that happened on the scene, likely I cannot say yes or no. So it will be up to them whether they fix or what will they do in the minutes of the rectifying of the mistakes that has been done.
And does your family still continue to use the metro rail system?
Ga rena choice ntate re tshwanetse go berekisa terene because it's the cheapest. So rona ntho re kopang ke gore ba lokise di terena fela because nka se re will go to the taxis di expensive, we will continue using the terene.
And how do you feel about having to use the train?
Ke tshogile le no
the members of the board of the RTMC, our acting Director General, Mr. Chris Hlabiso, and the CEO of RTMC, Makosini Msini, and all other representatives, leaders of our entities who are here, as has been indicated. The traffic chiefs, heads of departments, the members of the media, and distinguished guests. This is a rather long press statement. I'm not going to read all of it. I'm just going to highlight a few areas. The problem with Ishmael is that our pages are not the same, because I've got the size, the font size of a person who is beginning to be an elderly person. And others may actually be having yes, my apologies also. There is Ubabu typos. How can I forget, leave out? I would be in big trouble. President, my apologies. Ubabu typos, President, where is he? Of Santako. Kashile. You're welcome. Baba, we always appreciate when we are here, when we are releasing these statistics. We basically now are over what we normally term the festive season. Those who are still holidaying, they are really a privileged few, I'm sure. We say good luck to them, let them further enjoy. But we are over what we normally categorize as our festive season. That is why we are actually giving these statistics in order to give the country a sense of where we are. I also do need to say that we give out these statistics not just as a ritual, and we don't want to give out these statistics as if we are reading matric results, because they are not nice statistics. At the same time, though, we don't want to be suppressing what is happening. The aim really is to identify patterns and what do they tell us in terms of what needs to be done. I also just do need to say this up front, that what I intend doing this year is that hopefully before the end of February, I really want a 2-day very thorough discussion with all our road safety or road entities, caused together with our MECs, and also just look back a bit over the last 10 years, what has been happening, and then say comprehensively, what is it that we need to do? It just cannot be the usual story. We count bodies, we count people who have been injured, year in and year out. We come and repeat this every year, as if we have accepted that this is a normal situation. It's not a normal situation. I'd like to try that and see, when we sit down and say, what are the additional things that we need to do? This scourge can be defeated. Other countries have done it. And I believe that we can also do it. Because our roads still continue to be slaughterhouses. So it's very important that I say that up front. I'm not going to be reading, as I have said, all. I would like rather to start. I don't know what is this page in your normal that you might have distributed, unless you haven't distributed it. Where, if it's the same DM, it's page 9. That as we noted when we released the mid-season report on the 22nd of December 2018, We remain concerned about the involvement of trucks and minibus vehicles in major horrific road crashes. We're highlighting this mainly because when it's a truck or a minibus taxi, the casualties tend to be higher. Even in fewer road crashes, but the casualties are higher because of the nature of these vehicles. An analysis of this shows a disturbing trend also, where drivers from our neighboring countries were involved in some of the major crashes in which 5 or more people died per incident. These collisions took place in Bloemstreet, Free State, White River in Mpumalanga, Deerpoort near Bloemfontein in the Free State, Nzuze near Applesbush in KZN, Middelburg in Mpumalanga, Mokgopong in Limpopo, Clocolan in the Free State, and Tuyaspreit also in the Free State. A total of 54 lives were lost in these crashes, and the Free State province was the worst affected. This is by way of illustration that where these vehicles I'm talking about are involved, it may be few crashes, but the numbers of fatalities and injuries are very high. Evidence has also shown that drivers from our neighboring countries were also involved in serious and flagrant violations of road traffic rules by excessively overloading their vehicles and driving unroadworthy vehicles that pose a risk to other road users. I don't want the media then to begin to misinterpret this as if it's some kind of xenophobic analysis or statement. We are raising the fact that we have a challenge which I do intend to take up with my colleagues in SADC, that we really need to move faster to harmonize a common regime and dispensation of road safety rules and procedures, as well as requirements of vehicles on the road. I went to the Wanderers transport center. Some who use taxis, they call it a rank. Those who use trains, they call it the station or park station. Some of the vehicles I saw there, especially some of those from our neighboring countries, we would not allow them to be on our roads. But whenever we take tougher action, there is normally protest from the region that, well, they operate according to different rules. We want to prioritize that because there is also an increasing incidence of involvement of vehicles that we sometimes are not taking the kind of action that we should take. Although I did instruct the RTMC to say, don't treat these with kid gloves. If need be, we must prevent these vehicles and ask their owners, if it's buses and things, to bring safer vehicles. So we will be engaging the SADC governments through the SADC Secretariat and other continental bodies with similar jurisdictions to ensure that we get their cooperation. We are already in discussions, for instance, about a common database, so that a vehicle from Namibia, for instance, we can pick up by pressing a button, by clicking a button, to say, is this a properly registered vehicle, where in Vindu or wherever the case may be. It's one of the things that we have to do as SADC, otherwise we are not going to be able to control some of these crashes and be able to deal with it through our law enforcement agencies. In addition, I have directed the Road Traffic Management Corporation to conduct a thorough investigation in each of the driving license and testing centers where South African nationals involved in these major crashes obtained their licenses. One of the things we have to do is actually to look at the issue of these centers, driving license and testing centers, private ones which are also particularly posing a very difficult challenge to us, but as well as public ones. We're concerned that there are just too many fraudulent licenses on our roads. Or even if they are not fraudulent, but they've been given out fraudulently. They may look genuine, but they've been given out fraudulently. And the issue of the driving license and testing centers is important. We have, by the way, identified some of the examiners that are involved in issuing some of these problematic documents. Some of those identified include Newcastle, Bethlehem, Bombela, Komatipoort, Springbok, Ziras, Johannesburg, Umtata, Boksburg, Stenger, and Umhlabialinga. We're coming for them in a big way. And at TMC, we are not making an empty threat. We really need to go for this. Because it is very clear, by the way, in terms of our figures, that more than, way beyond 80% of our road crashes are as a result of the human factor. It's drunken driving, other forms of reckless driving, it's driving and texting, it's drivers who are not supposed to be on the road. When we go to this 2-day Indaba, we need to identify and say, what is it that we are actually going to do in order to be able to deal with this? It just cannot be business as usual. We also need to identify, still on these centers, on how they operate, and in terms of also identifying weaknesses in the system and how those are being addressed. It is also important that we understand the context in which we undertook our festive season road safety campaign this year. The report by the World Health Organization Global Status Report on Road Safety, which was released this last December, shows that deaths from road traffic crashes have increased from 1.25 million to 1.35 million a year throughout the world. We're not quoting this because we want to justify that, well, we may not be that bad, not at all. But we want to underline the global nature of the problem that we are dealing with. The report notes that the world is far from meeting the goal of reducing the number of deaths by 50% by the year 2020, as per the commitment in the United Nations. The third Global Ministerial Conference on Road Safety will be held in Sweden in April 2020 to set a new agenda and target for fatalities for the next target. The other contextual factor that we need to share with you is that the official vehicle population has grown tremendously in our country, and this has translated to an added burden on our road infrastructure network and law enforcement capacity. In December 2017, we had at least 12,205,112 registered vehicles in the country. This had increased to 12,462,979 in December 2018, meaning that there were 257,867 more vehicles this festive season than the last one. Than December 2017, let me put it that way, yes. It will be the last one before this, the 2018. Also, what is important is that in 2017, the number of driver's licenses issued were 12,658,135. This number has since increased to 13,055,317 cumulatively, meaning that 397,182 new drivers were recently licensed to use our road networks. While the overwhelming interest is understandably around the number of fatalities recorded over this period, it is important to assess the genesis within which these crashes occur. We continue to review our policies and legislation that are aimed at improving safety on our roads through proper infrastructure, ensuring safer vehicles, influence road user behavior, and ensuring proper post-crash response. As I've pointed out, the carnages we continue to experience on our roads are instigated by a number of factors, mostly embedded in human behavior and vehicle factors. As already stated, we outlined these in our statement. I'm not going to go through all of them, as we are going to be sharing the more detailed data with yourselves, and you must feel free, even after this briefing, that you are able to contact us and to seek further answers to some of the issues you may pick up when we give you this. This includes, of course, alcohol and substance abuse, reckless and negligent driving, unroadworthy vehicles, overtaking on blind rises, total disregard for rules of the road, corruption. By the way, corruption is two ways. As we intend to be tough on those who are using our roads recklessly, including through drunken driving, we also intend to be tough on our officers who receive bribes or who ask for bribes. We cannot win this battle by only focusing on the road users without focusing on our own traffic law enforcement officers. As a matter of fact, since I became Minister of Transport, this is one big complaint. People joke about it, that they can afford to break the rules as long as they've got a spare 1,000 rands in the pocket. They know that they're going to negotiate their way through. We are not saying that all our road traffic enforcement officers are bad, but we do have this as a very serious problem. In fact, we can't say it's very good that we intend reclassifying drunken driving from a Schedule 3 to a Schedule 5 offense, which is a more serious offense. But if we also do not do the same in terms of offense committed by officers who ask or receive bribes, we are not going to win this battle at all. So they must know, if you want to be a traffic cop, you must know that you must be squeaky clean. And we must make examples with those that we actually find to be in the wrong. Now, one of the major disturbing elements emerging from the information we have is the vulnerability of passengers. 36% of people dying from road-related incidents this year were passengers. This is an increase, a 2 percentage point increase from 34% recorded last year. And it reflects, amongst other things, the number of high occupancy vehicles, particularly minibus vehicles, that were involved in fatal crashes. Pedestrian fatalities have shown a 2 percentage point decrease from 37% last year to 35% this year, while driver fatalities remained at 27% and cyclists at 2%. Pedestrian vulnerability, just to share with you, manifests itself in the following ways: drinking and walking, including jaywalking, wrong and dangerous crossing of the road, informal settlements situated alongside busy roads and intersections, walking on and crossing of highways, failure to wear visible clothing at night, as well as areas in the vicinity of taverns. Now, you will remember that the midpoint of the season, when we gave you an update, we reported that crashes had increased by 5% and fatalities by 16%. However, following intervention focusing on removing overloaded trailers from the roads through Operation Malaisha, the increased law enforcement operations, and the introduction of the 24/7, that's a 24-hour shift, and the rollout of the evident breath alcohol test to deal with drunken driving, we managed to reduce crashes by 2 percentage points and 7 percentage points for fatalities. Something positive, at least. But while this is not a cause for celebration, we however believe that the situation could have been worse had we not made the necessary interventions to contain the situation. Although we have not succeeded in achieving the goal of a 10% reduction in fatalities over this period, we shall not despair. We will continue to take incremental steps until we reach our goal. When we have this discussion that I'm talking about, DM, one of the things we have to do, rather than often talking about national picture and national statistics, we need province and even municipal-based strategies. It's of no use to say we're going to reduce by 10% nationally. Where are we going to reduce? How is each province going to reduce? How is each municipality, especially those municipalities that have got very high number of crashes and fatalities? Now, according to preliminary figures, crashes recorded in the recent festive season total 1,286, regrettably and unfortunately resulting in 1,612 fatalities nationwide. We have a breakdown by provinces. Just to cite a few, the province with the highest number of crashes is Eastern Cape. There were 195, and the number of fatalities were 238. KZN at 267, number of crashes, number of fatalities is 328, and so on and so on. You can look at these figures yourself. A comparison of this year's statistics with the same period last year shows that Northern Cape, Free State, and Eastern Cape recorded the highest percentage increase in fatalities. This resulted in an 80% increase in Northern Cape, from 30 to 54 fatalities. The Free State increased by 28%, and the Eastern Cape recorded a 22% increase from 195 to 238 fatalities. Gauteng and Northwest are the only provinces that recorded percentage decreases in the number of fatalities. Gauteng recorded a commendable 19% decrease, while the Northwest recorded a 2% decrease. We must say this, that we really remain concerned about the incalcitrant attitude of our road users, as the statistics show. We as government, we have realized that where there is visibility of traffic law enforcement officers, especially if we do a 24/7 arrangement, there is significant decrease in road safety violations. But the challenge we have as a country is that whilst that is important and we must do it during heightened periods like the Easter weekend and the festive season, we cannot just rely on that alone. We have to tighten the laws such that even if someone does not see a police or a traffic law enforcement officer, people know that the consequences of reckless driving are going to be very serious. Now, we have, of course, increased visibility in those roads that we have identified as hazardous, and major routes like the N1, N3, and the N4. During these activities where we have increased visibility as well as roadblocks and so on, we upped a lot of these activities this year. For example, there were 775 roadblocks conducted compared to 440 the previous year. We stopped 1.358 vehicles and checked and checked them compared to 1.28 the previous year. Million. Should have said that. Thanks, Diane. 765,009 notices were issued compared to 290,023 the previous year. 4,016 vehicles were discontinued compared to 3,809 the previous year. 2,967 vehicles were impounded compared to 2,808 the previous year. 8,507 motorists were arrested compared to 6,441 the previous year. 2,223 arrests were for drunk driving and 775 for speeding. So you can see that it's like we've got road users and drivers in particular who just tell themselves that it doesn't matter who says what, I'm going to get onto the road in the state in which I prefer to be, even if I'm drunk. That is why, amongst other things, drunken driving, we are going to be treating it as a much more serious offense than we have done thus far. Our focused attention on corruption resulted in the arrest of 17 officials implicated in the fraudulent issuing of learner licenses and roadworthy certificates. And these arrests were in Gauteng, KZN, and Limpopo. The collective and collaborative efforts of our stakeholders paid off remarkably. And the faith-based community will use their religious platforms to spread the road safety message, and we applaud those. Now let me just end by highlighting some of the interventions, further interventions that we want to make. The first intervention is the implementation of the ARTO Act and the demerit point system. You make an offense, we deduct points towards taking away your license. We have long been threatening this. We are going to be implementing this now, so that repeat offenders or those serious offenders, we are able to deal with them to the effect that they do not deserve to be on our roads. We are going to be reclassifying, as I have said, the more serious road traffic offenses to Schedule 5 of the Criminal Procedures Act. And this includes a mandatory minimum sentence for drunken driving, inconsiderate, reckless, and negligent driving. Also, another action is to engage with the South African Police Services and the Justice Department on the conditions for the granting of bail, particularly on motorists caught drunk and speeding. The intensification of the National Traffic Anti-Corruption Unit sting operation in conjunction with the Special Investigating Unit at driver and learner testing centers, at vehicle testing centers and driving schools. We have to go big on this one. As I have said, the rolling out of the road safety curriculum at basic education level is also underway, with the curriculum having been finalized. The implementation plan for the introduction of the driving school instructor course. The South African Qualifications Authority registered this groundbreaking qualification in December last year. We will work closely with the schools to improve safety on our roads by ensuring the production of competent drivers. But this will not be a substitute from the additional measures that we may come up with, that I've spoken about, from our indaba internal with our own structures that we want to make, to say how do we really once and for all confront this. On behalf of the shareholders of the RTMC, which is our MECs, and myself, I wish to thank our law enforcement officers in all spheres of government, the South African Police Services, Emergency Medical Services, our private sector partners, and the road safety activists and volunteers for their commitment and relentless campaigns. But I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our good drivers, to say, keep it up. And of course, we would also like to express our condolences to all those families who lost loved ones. And it's also very sad for a good driver on the road to be run over or to be involved in a head-on collision with a drunken driver. But we must thank all those who obey the rules and the law. Thank you to you, the media, who have partnered with us in spreading the word and encouraging responsible behavior. Please continue working with us to help fight this scourge. Also, please tell your bosses to give us discount when we are asking for adverts. Although we know media is not in good shape, especially print media these days, but discount will be a patriotic contribution so that we are able to send our message. To those who are still refusing to comply, we really want to say your days are numbered. It's just a matter of time before we catch you and remove you from our roads. We really do believe that together we can make South African roads much safer than they are now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister.
Oh, sorry. I left out something important. My apologies. I just wanted to highlight the fact that we lost some of our champions in the transport family. My apologies for that. We lost one of our former spokespersons, the late Joseph Mabuza, who was working for the Mpumalanga Department of Community Safety, Security and Liaison. The Gauteng traffic officer, Napoleon Schobela, and Constable Tembi Padziri from the SAPS. And may their souls rest in eternal peace, and their deaths were not in vain. We would also like, on behalf of the South African government, to also wish those who were injured a speedy recovery. And also thank the unflinching willingness by some South Africans who heeded our clarion call and contributed to road safety. Thank you very much.
Another slide, amendment to this statement in terms of the key intervention. The reclassification in the statement, the hard copy that we have, it says all road traffic offences. It's not all. It's only those that are below in that statement. So it must read the reclassification of road traffic offences to Schedule 5 of the Criminal Procedures Act, not all. Thank you. We now have come to the end of the reading of the statement by the Minister. We will proceed to the second part of our briefing by giving you members of the media an opportunity to ask questions. Please identify yourself, the name of the media house you represent, and that goes both for the Cape Town media and the ones here in Pretoria. I shall start by asking for hands here in Pretoria, then we'll join the colleagues in Cape Town. So you are the first, you are the second, the third. Okay, we'll take those three hands, then we'll go cross over to Cape Town. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's Alex from News 24. Just a couple of questions for clarity. When was the festive period recorded? Is it the same as last year? Would it be from December 1 to Jan 9? Just want to check on that. And there was an increase in fatalities, wasn't there? Just if we can get a clarification on that. And then you also talk about you talk about the passenger deaths where you say at least 36%. I just want to know, is that just because this is preliminary report, or is it 36%? It just says at least 36%. Just want to know if those stats are such. Thanks.
Next one.
Hi, I'm Christian Duplessis from Netwerk 24. Also, just to clarify, as I understand it, fatalities actually decreased, but there's only 2 provinces that showed a decrease. If you look at Gauteng, 19%. What is Gauteng doing, especially to show this decrease? And also to the Minister, as well as a second question, did you expect the decrease considering that the preliminary report showed such a high increase?
The third one.
Okay, thank you. It's Govind from ENCA. Minister, my question relates to called speeding. Could you clarify what your proposals are at this stage regarding that? And then thirdly, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The first question in terms of the stats, it is from the 1st of December to the 8th of January 2019. That's the focus. Thank you. I'll ask the Minister and the MECs, DM, to take up the questions. Thank
you. Can I leave the last 2 questions to our TMC? On the minimum and renting of bed and all that. Well, yeah, Ishmael, we have answered the question of the period we're talking about. We always, when we heighten road safety campaigns, firstly, I must say that to us this is a 365-day focus. Every day we are focusing on improving road safety on our roads. But inevitably, there are periods where there is much higher movement and volume, like your Easter weekend in particular, and other long weekends usually, and the festive season in particular. We have to heighten beyond what we normally do in order to deal with this. We always committed to try and decrease crashes and fatalities all the time. And there are measures that we've undertaken, like the measures we are undertaking now, which, by the way, is something, as I said, when we looked at the mid-festive season statistics, the issue of police or traffic officers' enforcement activities, the increase to 24 hours every day during this time, what has actually contributed to the decrease, in Gauteng, is something that we have identified as a measure that we need to take as an additional measure, that where there is police visibility, there is less. So we never plan we're always planning for decrease in fatalities. But that also helps us when we actually study the patterns just at the beginning, the first 16, 17 days of the festive season, to see what additional measures we need to take. Especially then for the more peak period, which is around the Christmas period and New Year's Eve and all those. So that helped somehow by bringing this down, learning from that period to then look at the patterns and also to get more specifics. What time, for instance, are these fatalities happening and on what days? And then we are able to actually implement the necessary measures. Well, yes, these are provisional statistics, but we hope that at least they are as close to the final situation as possible. The reason why also partly we call them provisional is because fatalities can change, for instance. Other times, there might have been that we have left out this or that, but often these are usually as close as possible to the final figure. 36%, yes, is what we have at the moment. But then, as I have said, if there may be a change in fatalities, for instance, such that even passengers, there may be an increase, as unfortunately other people involved in these crashes pass away and not survive, those crashes. We were hoping for a decrease after this, I've said, after the preliminary results. The fact that also there has indeed been a decrease, that in itself tells us going forward what else we need to do in order to be able to deal with this scourge of road crashes and road fatalities and injuries. By the way, we tend to talk about fatalities more, and we forget about the injuries, the disabilities that actually come out of these road crashes. People who fortunately survive, but their lives are changed forever. So I don't know. I had thought that maybe, Bab Machav, you're also a legal person. Tell us then what's the minimum sentence for drunken drivers? Hopefully so that everyone here who takes a drink or two now and again, they can start preparing themselves in case they get caught. As well as the bail issue.
Thank you, Minister. Perhaps let me contextualize it as follows, more particularly addressing the question by ENCA. Fundamentally, legally, the issue of bail and sanctions are predominantly the province of judicial officers. And we cannot be seen to be encroaching into that discussion. But currently, as the law stands now, if you are arrested on allegations of driving drunk, all that needs to happen is you blow positively onto an apparatus, then you are taken to the police station. What happens when you are at the police station is that any commissioned officer of a particular rank is legally empowered to release you on bail at their own discretion upon payment of a nominal sum, usually 1,500 rands. Then you are A for the way. That is the ease with which bail is granted, and that is granted lawfully within the parameters. What we are mooting is a situation where you escalate the classification of the offense to disincentivize the ease with which bail is granted. We are not necessarily prescribing to those whose discretion it is to grant bail as to how they should exercise that discretion. It's a fact. You can pull over from a roadblock. If you've got 2,000, you pay 2,000. Even if you still have enough alcohol in your system, you are allowed to go. So that is the mischief that we are seeking to address. The law does not prescribe a minimum sentence, even if you are to be convicted of drunk driving or driving over a particular limit. We regard this as a gap in the legal system. let me cast your mind backwards. There was a time when murders were rampant, and bail for murder you could still get even at the police station. The law changed to say if you are accused of committing a murder, you will still make your first appearance within the prescribed 48-hour period. However, your bail application will have to be postponed for at least 7 days, at which point, if you convince the judicial officer that you should be admitted to bail, then that particular judicial officer will admit you to bail. Now, we are trying to follow the same route. Infrastructure was vandalized, and people who were accused of being izinyoka could be arrested and be released with ease. So the approach is the same. So I cannot sit here and say to you, these are the bail amounts that a judicial officer may give. But when we do succeed, the issue of bail will then go exactly before a judicial officer, remove it from a commission officer at a police station. That is the fundamental point. And I think the media has been reporting it incorrectly, as if we are saying you get arrested, we throw away the key, you only appear in 7 days. No, that will be against the law. With regard to the minimum sentence, Minister, what usually happens is that the prescribed minimum sentences regime that we have now talk to 15 years in respect of murder, rape, and all of those kind of offenses. We are still in discussions with the Justice Cluster, the NPA, and the Justice Services in terms of what it is that we would like the Law Commission to write into the laws. But what I can assure you is that the way the business case is structured is that we are seeking a mandatory jail term. Whether the Law Commission may craft it at 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years, we do not know. For us, what is important is that principle acceptance by everybody else that there needs to be some basic minimum sentence. But even if that were to be crafted into the law, the judicial officer in the form of a magistrate or a judge can still use their discretion based on whatever it is before them to say, even if the law says 15 years or 10 years, you might have shown extenuating circumstances that will motivate me to go down. Or there may be aggravating circumstances that motivates me to go up. Example in point, Oscar Pistora's case, it's public record. The minimum sentence said 15 years. However, somebody said 6 years. On appeal, it was increased. But that is exactly how your jurisprudence should work. The judicial officers are better positioned to then mete out what they view would be the appropriate sentence. So unfortunately, we can't give you a table of sanctions, but obviously that is the direction in which the country is going into. But bottom line is right now, you can be released on bail within 10 minutes of your arrest if you have 2,000, and we can't have that case. If you are driving at 220 kilometers per hour and you have enough bail, a sergeant, and I'm glad the SAPS is here, they'll just write a police bail and say you can go. The downside of that is when you go to court on Monday, it may well be that the docket itself has not even been given to the prosecutors. So what then happens is that when you rock up for your first appearance, that case is even struck from the roll because the police either might not have compiled the docket properly or the matter might not be properly before the court. So we don't even know how to track the arrest. We can only tell you the arrest, but we can't follow through on the prosecutions and the ultimate sentences. But it is something that we're working closely with the Justice Cluster.
Thank you, sir. Can we now cross over to Cape Town? Colleagues, do you have any questions there?
Yes, we've got one. Go ahead.
Sunay Payne from Daily Mail. I just wanted to know one thing. When the department is busy with the preliminary report, do they take in rail considerations as well, accidents on the rail system, and how many has there been in December and January?
Thank you. Is that all?
Thank you. Yes, that's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Can we come back to Victoria? You have the second part. Remaputi, the second. Any other colleagues? We might be taking the last round of questions and we need to close. Yes, sir, you will come. We need the fourth, the fifth. In that order, please. Thank you. You can start.
Alex from News 24. I just need to press for clarity here. There's been an increase in the road deaths, has there not?
Yes.
That's last year, 1,527. But you guys speak here about a 7% decrease in fatalities. Perhaps it's just not worded properly. You guys speaking mid-year, and you said, you haven't... yeah, you guys basically surmise as much that there was a decrease.
Yes.
But can you just maybe please get the actual numbers? Was it an increase or a decrease, and by what percentage? Because you said there was a 7% decrease, which is not according to our numbers. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 2.
My name is Neo Makutin from FBC News Minister. My question regards to the retesting, compulsory retesting of all the drivers as it was sort of like discussed some few years years ago. I just want to know whether that kind of thinking is still in your name in terms of trying to sort of like force everybody to do a 5-year of periodical testing strategy to reduce the tonnage that is sort of like increasing almost every year. Thank you, Mr.
Number 3. Yes, sir. You're fine. Madam? You're okay, sir. All right. Robert?
Thank you, Mr. again. Okay, Minister, I think we've established that there's been an increase, so could you please just give a comment on, after 2 years of being able to decrease it, now you've recorded an increase this year. Why do you think that happened? What went wrong? And then what would you say is the primary cause of road deaths in South Africa over the festive season? Is it drunken driving, or is it reckless or negligent driving?
Thank you very much. Did I miss anyone?
No.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Sir, please.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Patrick O'Leary from Fleetwatch Truck Magazine. Mr. Minister, I'm just going to make a comment and some questions. You have a credibility problem in terms of we've heard it all before. We've sat in these press conferences, I don't know how many years, hearing what's going to change. And we just see increases. In terms of corruption, we've heard it before, but it's rampant out there. We're not seeing implementation that is tangible. The reality of the road is very different to the statements being made. And we now need tangible evidence and tangible action. And I know it takes two to tango. There are 2 people who think right. But we've heard it before. What tangible action is going to be taken? And 2, we've heard the 24/7 before. But when is that going to be implemented? I believe Commuter is a bit of a stumbling block there, but their demands are not unreasonable. When I've seen some of them. But when is 24/7 going to take place? It's a definite that it does improve the situation on the road. We're not seeing that. I think, traffic officers are regarded on the streets as a force without teeth, mainly because of their corruption. So it's making the government without teeth. And corruption has become a word that's bandied around. We need actual implementation. And with due respect, the leaders of this country have not shown our traffic officers much example. And I'm glad that you, Mr. Minister, were fired by one of the people I'm referring to. I think that's a big plus for your CV.
What happened?
But we need examples. We're tired of talk. 1,600, and excuse me, I'll finish now. 1,600 or whatever it is, one is one too many. We're tired of all these figures. We're tired of all this talk. Let's get down, and the road users need to be hammered hard. The traffic officials who are corrupt, taking $20 to let a taxi go off and kill 11 people, need to be taken off the road forever. We need harsh punishment on traffic officials, everything. We need good input. We need action, no longer talk. Please, Mr. Minister. Otherwise, your credibility and what you're saying is going to once again become unbelievable, because we've heard it from 8 ministers of transport. 8 since 1994. God bless you in your efforts, Mr. Minister.
Thank you. I think we'll take that as a comment. Yeah, thank you very much.
2 questions there. The 24/7, when we're going to see it, and what action has been taken, because that's a definite. And there was One other one. Can I ask one more? Sorry. Which is a question. Uniformity of traffic officials. You mentioned cross-border trucks, Mr. Minister. You know that only the cross-border road transport agency inspectors can fine cross-border trucks. The rest cannot do it along the roads of South Africa. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Gauteng RTMC police inspectors can only fine in Gauteng. They can't. We need uniformity of traffic officials. Is this on the table as a consideration? Thank you, Mr. Minister.
Thank you. Let's do it this way. Let's start on the technical questions with the RTMC CEO answering technical questions, especially in terms of the decrease.
Thank you, Minister DM. The issue of the statistics, I think
Is
there's
that on?
an error that journalists have picked up.
Is that on?
Yes. I think there's been an error. What the minister indicated, in terms of the fatal crash, there has been an increase of 2%, and in terms of the fatalities, there has been an increase of 7%, respectively. And those figures will then attest that there has been an increase. What the minister then said, relating to the midterm statistics, we reduced because at the midterm, the fatalities were 16%. Fatal crashes were 5%. At the end of the term, we're sitting at 2 and at 7 respectively. That's the matter that the minister is saying. Let me go to my good friend in terms of the 24/7. It is a common cause that the traffic officers at the provincial level are employed in terms of the Public Service Act. And in terms of the Public Service Act, you only work from 8 to 5. You work 8 hours. Anything beyond that, it's an overtime. And over weekends, they are then working overtime. What currently it's happening, we're consulting with all the provinces because the Department of Public Service Administration, together with Treasury, we are now redetermining the working conditions so that traffic officers work 24/7. You no longer classify the weekend as an overtime. We have done these consultations, Minister. We've gone to Mpumalanga, we've gone to Northwest, we've gone to Eastern Cape, we've gone to the Free State. We're dealing with now Western Cape. Once that process is completed, there will be a broader consultation in order to change the conditions of the working conditions of the traffic officers. Remember, the consultation must happen with actually the people that are involved. However, we need to indicate that 3 provinces have started implementing the 24/7. Western Cape has dealt with this. Mpumalanga has dealt with the 24/7. We assist in Northwest to deal with the 24/7. Gauteng has dealt with the 24/7 simply because of the focus area. Hence the reduction in Gauteng that we see of 19% in terms of the fatalities. The issue of the 5 years retesting, that was taken out of context. It's not an issue of 5 years. Any traffic law enforcement officer, if he suspects that you have acquired a license fraudulently or even a vehicle, he can direct you for retesting. It's something that can happen on a daily basis. It's on the discretion of a traffic officer, so examining. In the same way, if he then begins to suspect that the vehicle that you are driving is unroadworthy, even if it can have a disc, he can then give you a summons, discontinue the vehicle, direct you to take the vehicle to a particular testing station at a particular time. So that's already in the law. It doesn't warrant any amendment of the legislation. I think that was the issues that were raised technically.
All right, we will give to the MECs to make a remark. At the conclusion of their remark, it will be the Deputy Minister and the Minister will close the briefing with his remarks. We'll start with MEC Grant.
Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. Governor asked the question, what's the primary cause? Primary cause is driver attitude and behavior. The Minister's already said we are going to devote time before the end of February to network to get to grips with the basic causes. And there is a proposal that has been made to the RTMC which will be shared with all our colleagues from the provinces, but I believe it starts with the drivers. And it starts where they're involved in fatal accidents, where there should be mandatory counselling, that's assuming the driver survives the accident, and retesting. Let's start there. It'll send a huge signal out to all drivers that they must avoid crashes.
Anything, Gomane? Okay, and anything, Makropeje?
Thanks. Mine is to really thank the Minister and the collective. That Minister, after indeed you came to Limpopo for a prayer session in Limpopo, in Mudimolle, you can see that even in your speech you can indicate that as a result of some of these efforts that you have recommended to us to implement, N1 between Bilabila and Pulukwani, and some of the initiatives that have taken place, your cameras that are there on N1, Sandral has put cameras, and now they are finalizing putting the sticks on the road. And indeed, you can see that the behavior is changing on N1, and want to appreciate that, want to continue working together with you and the RTMC. And again, your visit on Bait Bridge was another intervention, Minister, that was necessary, that some of the causes that we have in Limpopo are not necessarily coming from within the country, but is the consequence of the cross-border issues. And I'm happy that in your speech you have highlighted some of those key issues that will really go a long way in assisting us as a province to deal with these challenges. Thank you.
I see, Minister.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think I won't be long, but just to say to the Minister that all efforts that the department has put in place to try and fight corruption. I hear one of the journalists saying that the traffic officers themselves are like dogs without teeth because they themselves are corrupt. I'll just make an example that in my province, in the Northern Cape, recently we fired traffic officers who were involved in corruption. So it cannot be true that there's nothing happening in terms of dealing with the levels of corruption on our road. We do accept that there are those, like the Minister also acknowledged, that we do have good officers in our midst, but also, like in any other situation, we'll also have those who are really a little bit out of order. So we are committed, and the issue of xenophobia is always blown out of proportion because recently when we were launching, we stopped 22-seater buses that were full of, should I say, illegal immigrants, for lack of a better word, who were not documented at all in one of our roadblocks. So those are some of the challenges that we must really deal with, like the Minister committed that SADC will have to really play its part. SADC countries will have to play their role in terms of dealing with these matters. Thank you very much.
MEC Northwest.
No, thank you very much. I think from our experience, wanted to deal with this issue of statistics every year. We draw lessons from statistics, and it helps us to make informative or informed decisions in terms of our interventions. But the most important thing is to appeal to our people, to road users, to respect the rules of the road, but also to indicate that some of us who are part of the cross-border issues, our experience is that we need really, as the Minister has emphasized, to ascertain that we create a uniform system so that we don't get problems from other countries as we implement our laws in the country. But also that we believe heightened visibility is really aiding us hence possibly the improvement in our province. So the 24/7 aspect, we will plead with RTMZ as well that we really finish our discussions with our stakeholders, so that we ensure that 24 hours service is provided to our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, MEC. We now will give the Deputy Minister to make a remark.
Thank you very much, Minister, colleagues, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. One of the causes during this festive season, we said it's human factor. It accounted for 90% of all crashes that happened and that occurred. And if you look at the breakdown of those human factors, they include jaywalking. And that actually talks to pedestrians in our towns, cities, in our village areas, crossing roads where they're not supposed to, which I think we see it very commonly in South Africa. And I think it's the issue that requires our attention as well. And of course, a lot of education and awareness campaigns. But I think also the minister mentioned in his statement that we will be rolling out the demerit system, that is the ARTO. And I think that we are aware that we had a bill that was in Parliament. It has passed NCOP, and therefore as soon as it is signed into law, we'll then be able to roll out not just ARTO per se, but with the demerit system, so that we take points from whoever is a habitual offender when it comes to road offenses. And I think that is also going to assist us. And I think if we do it effectively and efficiently, it can actually have direct impact on our roads. But I also believe that the minister mentioned some of the important features, that indeed we have increased the number of people that have licenses, the number of vehicles in South Africa, the population in general. And as a country, we aim to reduce this by 50%. It's not as easy as we might say, but indeed we're putting measures. Every country in the world, they still refer to 4 E's: education, enforcement, engineering, evaluation. They still refer to those. How these are being implemented, of course, it will differ from country to country, but they all refer to these 4 E's. And South Africa too, we are referring to the 4 E's, and we're doing as much as it is possible. You are aware that the roads that were mentioned by the minister are our national roads, beautiful roads. And therefore we build roads, we're maintaining them, and people get into roads, they drive as they want. Speed, under influence of alcohol, the issue of attitude. And I think these are the issues that we are grappling with. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Before the minister closes, there's one issue that the CEO of the RTMC must deal with. Then we'll give to the minister. CEO.
Minister, I think the issue that I'm called upon to deal with is the corruption. But Minister, you're not dealing with the corruption. It is a misnomer. Let's now, we're not going to give details. The reason why people did not feel the sting is because we're only arresting those of our own traffic officers. Minister, in the next time, which I'm not going to specify, there's 50 people that have dealt with who are recipients of driver's licenses. The number is 1,002 that we have completed dealing with the police. 50 will be taken in, cancelling the licenses, and some of them have got those licenses and are already employed because of those licenses. Now we're targeting the public, who are the holders of those fraudulent licenses. And I think it would be proper that the media must join the minister when those are taken in, because it's in all provinces.
Thank you very much, CEO. Minister,
yeah. Sorry. Look, I think there is one matter that we perhaps don't talk much about. our ability to tackle road crashes will not be dealt only through interventions on the road. That is why government policy, which we hope will be taken to higher levels by the new government after the elections, will be the issue of investing more in rail passenger transport. I can close my eyes now and just dream that it's 2029, driving between Johannesburg and Polokwane. You're not going to reduce the fatalities there. In fact, that road will be very difficult, MEC, unless we build rail. We need to invest more in rail so that we move both freight and passenger traffic away from the road to rail. So we do need to mention that that's an important intervention in itself that we would have to make as a country. We need a shift. We've been saying this is our policy, but we've not put enough resources into that. If it takes us 10 years to build a railway line for a faster train between Johannesburg and Polokwane, let it be so. Because we know in the end, I'm just making an example, it's not the only area. We really do need to do something about our long distance road networks. To that effect, then, let me link it to the question. No, we do not count rail accidents, aviation accidents, or maritime transport accident, which is part of transport. Because here the focus is on road safety. That's what it is. It's not that we have no interest in what is happening in rail. Right now, I am from this family which lost both mother and father in that train accident in Mountain View here in Tshwane. Left 6 children now as orphans. We are concerned about that equally, about how do we reduce all kinds of accidents in the entire transport system. But the focus is road safety for understandable reasons also. That's our biggest problem. It's our single biggest challenge, the issue of road crashes, as well as road fatalities and injuries. The issue of the absolute numbers has been, we were not trying to hide, by the way, that there's been an increase. There has been an increase. There is no need or reason to hide. I think that my colleagues have explained why, the factors, so I'm not going to repeat that, as well as the RTMC, the issue of compulsory retesting. Yes, I must underline this. There is no government policy which says that drivers will be retested after every 5 years. Although there are people who feel like that we need to do that. Maybe it's an issue at some stage we may put out for debate, but I don't want to run ahead of myself. There is no such decision by government as things stand now, as has been clarified. I'm glad that the trucking industry, at least journalists from the trucking industry, is here. I hope that we can build more of a relationship and closer working together. Because, as I said, where a truck is involved, it's a disaster. Often. Whether it's head-on collision, whether the driver loses control and so on, because of the size of the vehicle. But also have to admit that some of the most notorious and dangerous practices on the road are also found within the trucking industry. The issue of employment by some of drivers who are illegally in South Africa, it's a big problem. That's why these truck drivers are using us. We have not done anything to them, but they block our highways in order to protest against that. And some of the things that the workers tell us about what is happening in the trucking industry are horrific. So yes, be tough on us, but also we must be tough on the trucking industry. That they must eliminate many of these practices of trying to cut corners and making cheap money at the direct expense of the safety of the passengers, of road users. Let me put it that way. Look, we're serious about this matter of increasing visibility. What the RTMC has not said is that, I don't know, CEO, when we are finalizing your recruitment, but I'm aware that for the first time you are recruiting 300 trainee traffic officers. Sunday they will be at the college. 300, that's the single highest number we've ever recruited at one time. And by end of this year we want to recruit 700 more than this 300, which will be 1,000 in total. We have not increased the intake to the extent that we have because we have identified this area of visibility as being very important, and we can't implement 24/7 patrols and all that unless also we increase the numbers of traffic officers. We agree, we don't have, I've already said this, that the issue of bribery and corruption is something that we have to deal with very seriously so that we can. I mean, I just want to underline, we must distinguish between doing nothing and the fact that what we've not done is still not yet adequate. But we've done lots of things, informed by the very statistics that we provide here annually in recent years. There's a lot that we've done, and there are some improvements that are happening. But it's far from enough. There are just still too many road crashes, too many deaths, too many injuries. We are the first ones as government to actually admit that. But that does not mean that we are not doing anything. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. We now have come to the end of our media briefing. I have been asked to request the members of the media to stay put for the Minister of Justice media briefing, which is starting immediately underway, in relation to the bail application by Ms. Wanis. So the Minister will be making a statement just as soon as we have done with our media briefing. For this part of the briefing, I thank you, Chair Victoria, I thank colleagues in Cape Town.
Am I allowed to join that press as the General Secretary of the Communist
Change my cap, Minister.
Ask questions.
Ask questions.